There is no way he just said this. Brandon Beane, the Bills general manager, in a recent interview called out the NFL right after the trade deadline in something that will have serious implications for how we view our general managers in the near future. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bills Digest. Josh Schreiber here, and an absolute bombshell out of the press conference from the Buffalo Bills. It was Brandon Beane's post-deadline press conference, and he came out firing daggers at the rest of the NFL and their GMs, and this is very much out of the norm for Brandon Beane, who's very much a mellow, don't rock the boat type of general manager, keeps everything close to his chest. But in this press conference, as you're about to see, he went off on the new era of general managers across the NFL and the decisions they're making. And this has serious implications for how the Bills are going to control themselves really in the near future, as long as Brandon Beane is at the helm. I'm going to show you guys exactly what Brandon Beane said and what the fall off of this could be right after I say this. We are just under 150 subscribers away from reaching the 1,500 subscriber mark. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you like free daily Bills content here on your YouTube. We're going to make some YouTube shorts as well that you'll be able to see. Really excited for what we have planned and the future of Bills Digest. So without further ado, let's dive right into this. And Brandon Beane had a press conference after the trade deadline where he eviscerated the rest of the NFL. And personally, I don't agree with what he said. There are a lot of general managers that have gone about a different way than Beane has. But just for a little bit of context, Brandon Beane was hired in 2018 as the Bills general manager. His first draft, he drafted Josh Allen, and ever since then, he has really been someone viewed in a very high light by Bills fans and by the industry as a whole. Now, this is the first season that we're really seeing Bills fans start to get on Brandon Beane for not getting them over the hump and into the Super Bowl. And a lot of that stems from comments like the ones he made after the deadline. As we'll get into in just a bit, Brandon Beane really criticized how a lot of the new GMs who are just coming into the business are going about it. And I'll show you that right here. And here is the report. Brandon Beane blames new young GMs for all the trades at the deadline because they played Madden and fantasy football. Why he did not make any trades? He said 99% of players are available for a price, but it's not fantasy football. He later went on to say that the trade deadline is hard. He said going home at the end of the day, he felt like he just wasted his time by trying to make trades and all that sort of thing. But obviously, this is not something that Bills fans want to hear, that their GM is saying this was a waste of time. The deadline is hard. Yeah, we know. That's why you're hired to do this job. And you got to give Beane a little bit of credit. You understand where he's coming from. He doesn't want to trade away their future just for some mid-tier guy that won't get them over the hump. If it doesn't work, you're not in the best position to have prolonged success. He in the past has mentioned past teams that he didn't want to be like. And this is the main quote that people have been pointing towards. He said back in 2023, he wanted to avoid the situation the Los Angeles Rams have in the offseason in this quote-unquote teardown. Well, for those of you that don't remember, the Rams won the Super Bowl in 2023 in large part because they were not afraid to deal first and second round picks for high-end talent. They ended up trading for Von Miller from the Denver Broncos in the peak of his career, traded multiple first-round picks to get him, and they got a ring out of it. Now, Obviously, there may not have been a Von Miller-like player available at the deadline, and for all we know, they tried to trade for somebody. We know that they wanted to trade for somebody in the AFC East division, whether that was Garrett Wilson, whether that was Quinnen Williams, whether that was Jalen Phillips from the Miami Dolphins. We don't know, but we know that Beane did not end up making any of these moves, and really didn't have a chance to in terms of, other teams he could have gone to. But this quote has been pointed to a lot, and it is really coming back to bite Brandon Beane in the butt, so to speak, because the Rams, they had this teardown, and then they went on to be Super Bowl contenders again in 2024, again in 2025, and they are en route to potentially getting the number 1 overall seed in the NFC this year without ever going through an actual rebuild. That is exactly what Bills fans want the Bills and Brandon Beane to be able to do. Obviously, it's much easier said than done. It takes a lot of luck. It takes a lot of situational things to happen that go in your favor. But you got to create your own luck, at least in my opinion. Now, I'm going to take you guys back before we really talk about Brandon Beane again, but take you guys back to certain GMs around the league that have been successful doing what Brandon Beane does not support. The first one being the Los Angeles Rams. Les Snead, their GM, wore a shirt that said "F them picks" at the Super Bowl parade. And I'll tell you this, you could trade every pick the Bills have for the next 5 years. If you guarantee them a Super Bowl, not a single one of them will even bat an eye. That is the kind of stuff that Brandon Beane, I think, needs to realize is the fan base is all in on him. They want him to go all in, win this Super Bowl while Josh Allen is still in his prime, like Les Snead did with the Rams. And here is a picture of Les Snead at the Super Bowl parade wearing the F Them Picks shirt with his face on it. Absolutely legendary stuff. Now, the other notable GM that I think most of you guys have been thinking of, and I had him in the intro video, is none other than Eagles GM Howie Roseman, who he brought a Super Bowl to Philly this past season and did so by being aggressive. Pardon my voice there, but this is what Howie Roseman said after the deadline when they asked about his interest in trading for Micah Parsons and Myles Garrett. He said, "When there's opportunities to be aggressive for the right players, we're not going to sit on our hands. You don't have great success without taking great risks. We can't be afraid to fall." I think a lot of the times for you to get to the top, you have to be willing to take chances that may look controversial. I won't live with regret. Now, he later went on to say this: "It's a mentality. We can always upgrade at every spot. We owe it to our fans, our players, and owner to always be looking. It's hard to find talented young guys. However, we obviously don't give up picks just to give up picks. We feel every move made sense." So there was Howie Roseman kind of defending the trades that he made and explaining his thought process, because he is way more aggressive than most GMs are. So that is the type of person that Howie Roseman is. And then if we go to what Brandon Beane said, he said the GMs are coming in younger and more have played true fantasy football and stuff like that, growing up in the world of trades. Now, in my opinion, that is kind of a ridiculous thing to suggest, that the reason why we have more trades is because GMs are younger and grew up playing fantasy football. I think that's a bit of a cop-out and maybe a bit of an emotional answer as well from Beane. That's just a ridiculous thing to say. But with that being said, Brandon Beane is trying to explain and defend why he didn't make those trades and why he wasn't willing to give up the picks that he didn't give up. But now I want to talk to you guys about the fan reaction that we've seen on Twitter and on social media in general. The first one saying the Bills did not trade a single first or second round pick in Josh Allen's peak of his career, 25 to 29 years old. Josh Allen's going to be 30 years old next year. Who knows how long he will have that peak in him. The Bills have to do something now, and it is disappointing to see that they didn't. Another fan reiterated that and kind of expressed the same frustration. He said, not gonna lie, I'm pretty turned off by the Bills front office right now. Wasn't expecting a wow trade, but with back-to-back huge injuries to Michael Hoyt and Ed Oliver and not much of a wide receiver room, it's hard to believe they didn't add something, and I have to agree with Patrick Moran here that it doesn't really make sense. Other people have gone on to defend Brandon Beane and have said that he has been one of the more aggressive GMs in the NFL since getting a job with the Bills. You don't deal just to deal. If the right one was there, it's done. I think that's a little subjective. It's hard to know what is the right deal or not. But if you're the Buffalo Bills, you're in your window right now. You simply have to get something done. And that is where my side of the argument is. Let me know in the comments, where are you guys? Do you think Brandon Beane is right to not just move picks to get some random players or some players that he thinks the Bills could use? Or should he be more aggressive, even if it means trading some picks and overpaying? Let me know in the comments and make sure to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.